Just don't lose. Hi, everybody. We are the Climate Fiction Book Club, and we're discussing today Gun Island. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're in the comments, please say hi. And let me make sure I've got it where I can see the comments coming in. And we were expecting two guests. So Allie from Alexandria Reads was going to be joining us, but is very pregnant and is not feeling well and is not going to be joining us today. And we're also expecting Nat from Anattynook, but she is in Singapore where it's 6 a.m. and we haven't yet seen her show up today, but it's possible she slept in or something happened. We hope that you're fine, Nat, and maybe she'll join us later on. Why don't we quickly reintroduce ourselves in case we have some new people watching. Hi, cool gamer.
Okay, I'll start. Hello, my name's Sage. I have a channel on here. It's just my name, Sage AG. And I read books, mostly queer books, and I write things, and I have a baby, and that's really the highlight of my channel.
Nice. I'm Will or Wilma. I use they, them pronouns. And my channel on YouTube is NB Reads. And I haven't been active there reading a lot lately because my life has been busy with other stuff and work and things. I read pretty much everything, I think. But I like also climate fiction, but I was going to say superstitious, but I forgot the real word for it.
Supernatural?
No, it's fine. Weird fiction. LGBTQ.
Speculative?
Speculative, thank you, Sam. I try to be that reader, but it doesn't always happen.
Cool. I'm Sim, and also I want to especially thank Will, who stayed up till midnight to be able to do this broadcast. So thank you, Will. I would be completely comatose. I cannot stay up past 11 anymore because of the babies. My name's Sim Kern. My pronouns are they, them. I live in Houston, and what else is relevant? Oh, I have a booktube channel. I'm also an author. I have 2 books coming out this year. And one, I have a cover reveal on next Friday, probably. It's going to be next Friday. And it's not going to be on tour. You know, they're like a big deal. Yeah. I'm very excited. And the cover is really, really beautiful. So I can't wait to share that out. Hi, Meg in the chat and anybody else who may have joined us. And hopefully we'll see Nat come through soon, but I guess we should get started with talking about Gun Island. So as usual, let's start with first thoughts, overall impressions. What y'all think?
When I started it, I felt like I was getting kind of a The Alchemist vibe, with the way that there's a journey of the main character and he's talking with these people and getting their stories, and I was struggling to retain the information. But then I think when we hit page 100 and the migration and the animal thing, and also was talking more about climate change and weather patterns and all that stuff, it got much more interesting. And I think at the end, I think it was really cool with the concept of the story of the past and the future and how they blended together, also using these different themes that connected in a very casual but also meaningful way. So I ended up liking it, but it wasn't my favorite book ever.
I struggle with authors who write things in a way to make the characters sound really academic, I guess. And so I kind of struggled with just the main characters just the narration of it. So that kind of took me out of it, honestly. But I did appreciate like that there were so many different like pieces of climate change coming together, and also how he related to that to like human migration. And just I feel like they also connected to each character really well. I wasn't like super invested in any of the characters. I thought the main character was like kind of annoying because of the way that he talked, but also like the way that he talked about women kind of annoyed me. Especially when he's like, I'm a rare bookseller. Like no woman will ever want me because of that. And I'm like, oh God. So yeah, that was just kind of like an obnoxious thing for me. But overall, I'm really interested in this author's brain, and I definitely want to read more of his nonfiction. I think that I would actually vibe with that a lot more.
Yeah, this was a book that I'm really glad I had this book club to read it through till the end, because it really did come together for me at the end. And I might have DNF'd it if I hadn't known we were going to have this book club, because just it was slow to get started and there were some lags in pacing. Like I would find myself getting really hooked, like when they were in the Sundarbans and Tipu was bitten by a snake and there was like all this forward momentum in the plot, and then it just like he goes back to Brooklyn and decides to never think about mysteries again, and it slows way down again, and that kind of kept happening. I'd get myself hooked, and then all of a sudden he's like, oh, but this is all nonsense, and it stays really flat. So I had the pacing was like an issue for me, but then at the end of the book I found myself like tearing up and having like a really strong emotional response. And then all day I've been thinking about like all these connections between the different ideas in the book and the different plot points in the book. And I think that, I'm excited to talk about like all those different things. But yeah, I also thought the main character was like very academic and fussy. Kind of took longer to say things than he needed to, which as a narrator, it was like realistic to his character, but it felt almost like reading a Victorian book when I was like starting it. That kind of lots of words to say something simple.
Yeah.
But I started liking it more when the first book at the beginning of the book, it was like him by himself talking about stuff a lot. And then once other characters came in and started like making fun of him, like Tipu and Cinta, then I started liking the book better.
Yeah, I agree. I wasn't a big fan of the main character either. Also, like how he was so skeptical to like literally anything supernatural. He was just like so turned off from it. And then when he started to like open up to it, he got annoyed when other people like were skeptical towards him. And I was like, that was
true.
you.
I didn't think about that. I thought that the comment was really interesting that Cinta made about how the term supernatural was coined during the Spanish Inquisition. And so the idea that we have that some things are natural and some things are supernatural.
Oh yeah, that bit.
From Christianity. And like they decided what was, oh, that's God and religion and real. And this other stuff that's not Christian is supernatural, superstitious.
Yeah, I also like the conversation about like what we consider natural and like unnatural in animals and ourselves. Like we consider a lot of the stuff that we have influenced nature to become like unnatural.
Yeah.
Even though like we're also part of nature. I think there was a section about that in the book.
Or it's like unnatural that a spider would be there when like think about it's way more natural for a spider to be hanging around than like the city of Venice itself.
That's true.
I liked all the different locations too. I love a book with a bunch of different locations, like in the real world. And then like I like to research them on my phone and look at pictures and stuff. I learned a lot about Venice and the Sundarbans. And that's cool. I like that. Amitav Ghosh seems like he's like really well traveled, probably.
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting. So most books in the speculative genre, well, like, okay, like my book, Depart, for a good amount of the book, you're wondering, like, is supernatural stuff happening, or is this all in a character's mind who's like slowly losing their sanity? And a lot of books, I think most books in that genre eventually do like tell you one way or the other, right? You either find out the main character is like losing it, or you find out that the supernatural stuff was real all along. This book kind of stayed in that liminal space where you never really get that resolved either way. What did y'all think about that?
I do think the whole book kind of read like, I don't know, like in really dry Indiana Jones or something like that. Like I did feel this sense of like a classic story, like treasured.
Brutal.
Sorry. But yeah. So I think I also got that. Hold on. Otto's crying and I think Cody's outside. But yeah, I agree. Maybe that no, just hold on.
What did you think? Well, did you want it to like resolve, or did you like that it stayed sort of like, was anything going supernatural going on ever, or was it all just coincidence?
I struggle sometimes like with knowing what I actually want. Like I'll really enjoy thinking about stuff, you know, like when the author leaves the open and ideas and kind of like gives you hints at different like solutions that it could be. Like I think it's exciting. I don't like the feeling that it makes me feel because I want like an answer, but I think it's like interesting. But also I sometimes wonder if it's like from an author point of view, if it's like easier for them also to make some like the reader do some of the work. I'm not sure. I don't ever write stuff, so
I think actually what he did here is harder. Just
Mm,
having written a book like this, like I think the inclination is to pick a side. And I felt like he had to be very careful to put in just enough little wild coincidences and supernatural description to make you start to think it was going in that direction, but then pulls back from ever like giving away
yeah.
completely. I think that's tough. I would
That
like
is one of my favorite. Like, that is one of my favorite. I don't know, writing devices, I guess, or like storytelling method. I feel like there have been a lot of books that I really like that do that. Like Sharks in the Time of Saviors does that, and Stay and Fight does that. Those are both kind of climate fiction books too.
I just got that one. Stay and Fight.
Nice. It's a frustrating book to read, but it's very good. Just as the characters are just so unlikable. But yeah, very good, like magical metaphor for pipelines and the oil industry, in like specifically in the upper East Coast, Midwest. I don't know what that's called.
like Boston.
Yeah, like the Michigan area.
That Michigan is the center of the country.
And never mind.
Yeah. Along the Great Lake. It does have a coastline along the Great Lakes. You know.
That's what confuses me.
Yeah.
I literally don't know anything past the Pacific Northwest.
Surrounded by lakes on 3 sides.
Okay.
That's okay, because the Pacific Northwest to me is all one big temperate rainforest in my mind. My friend moved to San Francisco there, and I asked them how was Portland, and like they had definitely told me they moved to San Francisco like 5 times.
Nice.
Okay, yeah, Seattle, San Francisco, and Portland are sort of the same place in my brain because I haven't really been there except for when I was like a little kid. Okay, another question I had was oh my god, I just blanked. I was gonna say, One thing that took me out of the little supernatural details was the brown recluse spider being so dangerous. Brown recluse are not that dangerous. There's no such thing as an anti-venom. I looked it up because I got bit by one as a kid, and I just like my knee swelled up like really big. And I think I had to take antibiotics because it gets necrotic, but it's like not that big of a deal to get bit by a brown recluse. So he was making a really big deal out of seeing a brown recluse. Like I see them all the time. So
interesting. Maybe not as well traveled as we thought.
Yeah, I guess it's like sometimes with books like this, it's so packed with like information about like cities and history. And I do wonder how much of it is real and how much is like created for the story. But then I'm always too lazy to like go then and do my own research. And I'm like, I guess I'll never know.
Yeah. I have a feeling the historical stuff is like more accurate. I don't know, just because I think he's like a historian because he wrote this book, The Nutmeg Curse, which is all about the history of the spice trade. Mm-hmm. So it feels like he took all the research he did for that, and probably a lot of that ended up like giving the ideas for this book, maybe.
I was wondering if the similar thing happened with The Great Derangement, because it seems like that's very much the nonfiction version of like everything he was trying to say about climate change in this.
Yeah. What were some of the ideas like that? I marked some passages, which I can talk about, but were there any like ideas about climate change that really jumped out at you, or like ways of thinking about it, or ways the characters reacted to it?
I think the whole thing with like the dolphins and whales and ocean animals in general was really interesting, especially when they talked about how like was it like radio waves from like naval ships can interfere with the sonar of the animals, so they can, like when the dolphins were like trapped and wouldn't go through their pathway even though they could just go around. That really made me start thinking just about how I think I instantly go to like, we're fucking up the ocean because of garbage and oil. But I don't necessarily think about just the presence of ships in general and like just human existence in the ocean, like physical human existence in the ocean, and how that impacts
sound. Yeah. And sound has a huge impact on birds too.
Mm-hmm.
All kinds of animals.
Yeah.
I thought this part really hit me, where he was like imagining, he was sort of like imagining, it's on page 167, that he was the gun merchant. Or no, he was imagining that he was Manasa Devi, the snake goddess, and like thinking about like, why would she be so obsessed with getting this one disciple like back and chasing him all around the world. And then he says, hence the urgency of her search for the merchant, for if he and others like him were to disavow her authority, then all those unseen boundaries would vanish, and humans, driven, as was the merchant, by the quest for profit, would recognize no restraint in relation to other living things. This was why the merchant had to be found. This was why his attempts at concealment had to be thwarted at all costs. Like, the minute that people turned away from any kind of religions that like recognize the natural world, and holding space for like the sanctity of the natural world was like the beginning of, because of enlightenment or whatever, like that was the beginning of the chain of events and great industrial revolution that has led to nature now is going to kill us through like, you know, the migration of like snakes and spiders, which aren't like such a big thing, but more like the weather and the famine and the flooding and stuff that's coming.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, I don't know, I just hadn't really thought about all those connections and that feedback loop before.
Yeah. I read some reviews of this book that were like, he was just trying to do like way too much, like too many ideas. But I felt like all of those things were kind of necessary, because it's not just like one thing happening at once. You know, it's not like we only have to think about flooding. It's like flooding is a result of 100 other things and is also impacting 1,000 other things, you know?
So I like that aspect of the book. I liked that in LA there's wildfires and then you almost forget about it because then there's a tornado and then there's this. And like, isn't that what the world feels like now? Like that's what it feels like every time you get on Twitter, you know, or like surviving a year in Houston, there's going to be 4 or 5 natural disasters. Like it definitely feels, I don't know. And the ship worms in Venice, like, yeah, it's all over the place. It's all the collapse of all these.
There are some really gross descriptions in this too. Worms, like, especially.
Oh God, I hate worms. Like that bit really got to me. I was like,
I had a hard time visualizing it. Like they're just like on a pier and looking at the worms in the wood, and then somehow the pier suddenly collapsed. Which okay. But then they're like a swarm of worms was like crawling all over them. Did that really happen? Or were they just having a panic attack? I don't know. And then her leg was broken and the pier was falling into the ocean. The water was running. I had a hard time just like visualizing that scene. But I was very interested to learn about the ship worm. Go ahead.
No, sorry. I was just saying I was picturing it more like leeches looking. Like I don't know what they look like, but like
I looked them up. I mean, they're kind of like white leeches looking things.
I'm not gonna look it up.
It reminds me of that. Well, okay, this is kind of like actually, I don't know why, but the thing that I always think about with like a lot of insects at once is this episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer where
nice.
I think it's like this salesman guy who like comes to her door and like is like flirting with her mom or something, but then he's just literally like a body made of bugs. I think it was worms or something. But that visual has really scarred me for life.
I watched like a similar thing. This is really off topic, but a similar thing as a kid. We watched this horror movie, which I don't know what it was, but I remember it took place in the desert, like the opening scene. And all of a sudden there was like a burst of bugs, like
was it the Mummy?
Maybe is that the first scene in the Mummy?
I think it was like a big swarm of locusts.
And it comes out.
There's a big swarm of locusts.
Oh.
And it comes like up out of the desert and it goes inside of like on their skin, so you can see them walking like under the skin like this.
Maybe it's been a real time.
Grossest thing I've ever seen. Forever scarred.
To go back to the book, I also did not realize that king cobras can be 18 feet long and do for sure stand up. Like when he was like, the king cobra was standing up and it was taller than me. I was like, what are you talking about? It's a snake. Like at most it's going to be like 2 feet off the ground. But no, I looked it up. Those things are big.
Dang.
They stand like 10 feet tall. You could Google image it if you haven't.
And strong.
Terrifying.
I haven't. I'm going to do it. I did feel like the way that was resolved with, what's her name? Priya.
Mm-hmm.
Just like having the anti-venom and like being already like, I'm just on a plane. I'm just going to be there. Like miraculously. I was like, okay, that's a little easy. Yeah.
Well, that was the part of the book where I was thinking, okay, this is going to be supernatural. And I mean, in my heart, I love supernatural. Like I love speculative fiction. I did want it to go full weird, like weird. It did, even though I can respect the choice not to. Like that's what my heart wanted. And I wanted Manasa Devi to be like, or Manasa Devi. I'm probably butchering every single proper noun in relation to this book. My friend Sajani, if she ever watches it, is going to be laughing at me really hard. Manasa Devi. Still sure I'm saying that super wrong. But yeah, like I wanted her to show up and be real. Stuff to continue to get weirder after the snake bite. I did love Tipu and Rafi.
Yeah.
They were my favorite characters.
Same. King cobras are scary.
Are you looking at them?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're big.
And the people who
I
just
really-
hold them are
I really-
scary. Sorry.
What did you say, Sage?
I said, and the people who just hold them are scary.
I was just gonna say there's this part, I think it's towards the end, where like all the tornadoes and the hail and everything's happening, where there's a line that was like people all over Italy like were becoming refugees. And I think that's like it was like a great moment to bring that in, because you see like these immigrants who might or might not be traveling because of like climate reasons, maybe like more political reasons or whatever. And it's like, don't let them in, whatever. But then the people in the country are also like fleeing because of climate change. It's like all of a sudden you have the people like within and outside of the borders, like needing the same type of aid and like being in the same or similar situations, but like obviously treated completely differently because of, yeah, the reasons.
Also, the reflection he does when they run into the protesters' boat and they're seeing the like rage and the fear in their face, and he just thinks about how like just like sums up colonization and how like these people really are, I mean, why are they angry and why did they get on this boat to scream at refugees? Because they've enjoyed centuries of privilege, and they're realizing that the fact that these refugees are coming here of their own agency means that all of those systems that we're supposed to keep, like, you know, brown people in other continents and yet serving them in Europe just for the whites, like those systems have failed and or are failing, and they're not going to have those privileges anymore. And yeah, I don't know, but done super eloquently. Like that was a really good passage.
Yeah. For sure.
Also, like the idea of like waking up. At one point, he's like, "What's happening to me? Am I like possessed?" And Cinta's like, "No, you're not possessed, but you're like wake." Like everyone who's not aware of climate change and not freaking out about climate change those are the people who are possessed, demonically possessed, and you're like waking up out of the possession. Mm-hmm. Which that feels accurate to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess like throughout the story, there was kind of like these passionate passages and moments where like the theme of like climate change really brought into it. And I guess like I really like the different themes throughout the story, but I didn't feel like they were all present all the time. And like I wish they kind of would have been like brought to the table more consistently. I don't know. Maybe it's just because we're reading it for like the climate fiction book club.
I think that, yeah, no, I mean, it's kind of like a trade-off with what you said about Sage, about like showing the everywhere all at once and like taking on all these different topics, which is how like rolling climate catastrophe feels. But like narratively with a book, we expect an author to like stick with one plot and one theme like the whole way through the story. And it's pretty unsettling to not get that. And it can also create those like lags and tension. Like I was really invested in the shrine mystery and the cobra and Tipu. And then all of that was swept away. Literally, the shrine was swept away by the ocean. We don't see Tipu for another like 150 pages after that. The mystery gets dropped for like a good long while, you know, before it connects back. And there's no more snakes after that. Where like you just got me really freaked out about snakes.
Yeah.
So, or I guess there's the snake on the plane. It was like really funny to me.
This snake on the cover should have more snake action.
It looks kind of like a young adult cover to me of like a fantasy book.
Yeah.
It does look like that. There's so many young adult covers with like big text and then like a snake twining through them. Serpent and bone. Probably a bunch of
more
black and a black cover, right? This is an extremely misleading cover. Also, the title is so misleading.
bad.
I thought this book was going to be super violent. That's why I didn't read it. Because the description on the back is super vague. It talks about a gun merchant. You would think a gun merchant, someone selling guns, there's going to be some violence. The worst violence was someone getting a snake bite. And some people got beat up. Rafi got beat up.
Attacked by worms.
There was worm attack. It's very slow for a book called Gun Island.
Oh,
I wonder oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to start something new. So
yeah.
Oh. Okay, I just have one thing to
yeah.
I was just gonna say, I wonder if this has caused any like gun happy dudes to pick up this book and be like, oh, this is actually like about climate change, you know?
I didn't look that deep into the Goodreads comments, but I wonder what the 1-star Goodreads comments are like. There might be.
Oh, I did read one, and that was the one that was like, if this guy keeps going in the direction of writing about climate change, I'm out. Like, that was pretty much it. That was the negative review. Yeah.
I was going to ask how you interpreted like the story, kind of like the story that was been told, and then like the purpose of it, kind of like it was nice and it brought like the themes together, but the story itself, like what you think like there was meaning.
Well, I think it was kind of that passage that I read about like the goddess who represents like these dangerous aspects of the natural world, but like wants this human to this human is supposed to like respect her, right? And like respect that nature is dangerous.
Yeah.
And the gun merchant didn't respect that and like ran away from worshiping her and refused to worship her. And so she sent all these catastrophes to get him. And that's just like a parable of like, if you don't respect nature, I think it will get you. Like, because you're going to mess with it and mess it up. And that's going to make all of these systems collapse.
But then the story was like almost like a prophecy too of like what was happening in the book.
Yeah. That was cool. I thought that was really cool.
I liked it too, but I don't know if I don't know.
I liked that Captain Ilias was Jewish. I really perked up when there was all of a sudden a Jewish character, and I had no idea about where the word ghetto came from in Venice. I thought all that was super cool. Although it's pretty wild that he was like, yeah, Venice was like the good place to be a Jew in Europe at the time, but also they had to wear red and yellow turbans and live on a separate island. Promise not to mix with the people. Yeah. And I think the parallelism he was also trying to suggest was like the little ice age, and then now it's happening again. Like that's the last time there was a major climate disruption, and that's just like a teeny tiny preview of everything that's happening and going to happen.
Right.
From big boy climate change.
And it was kind of like written as if this was like the start, or like it was called the beginning of the end, sort of thing.
Or the little ice age was, because that was like the start of the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, and then again now it would be like another type of revolution. Like this after the story was retold, it's like or relived kind of. It was like the awakening of.
Yeah, there was hope at the end. Is that where you're kind of getting at?
Yeah, I felt like at the end the reflection was kind of how like now the world will be waking up because of like this event that happened, and people cared so much and they were getting like the publicity for this event, and people were donating money and stuff, and how like it would be brought more to light and people would, care, not be possessed.
Yeah, the hopefulness is in the people who are also like welcoming the refugees, and in what Cinta is saying at the end about how like our salvation is in the origin, or the origin is our salvation. Kind of thinking about like, to me, it made me think about like indigenous ways of knowledge can help us learn how to live more in harmony with the environment than what we're currently doing. And so, going back to some of our roots and going back to like having respect for the natural world is a good idea and would be a good idea. Yeah. Man, I'm thinking too about like, I thought it was so cool how they talked about like the Venice being a fantasy because everyone doing all the work is Bangladeshi. And they're like, but they're not making their food. Like the entire island is being run by the way he made it sound, like by these like Bangladeshi immigrants and stuff, but they're just making Italian food, fulfilling this like fantasy of white people. I thought that was so interesting. And that's like definitely like, I don't know, like in Houston, you go to any restaurant and like no matter what the ethnicity of the restaurant is, it's always like Mexican Americans cooking the food in the back, or like Central Americans. And the food's great. Like our food is amazing, it's always good.
Yeah, it's like a parallel that could be drawn to probably most countries in the world.
Yeah.
It is really interesting. I would like to find a book maybe that talks about like, or for us to read, that talks about like specifically how humans having to settle in different areas that have been like forced out of their own homes by like colonization impact the food. Maybe that's not like directly related to climate change, but I feel like it's in the same vein, like somehow related. But because I think about like, I was watching this food show on Netflix. I don't remember what it's called, but Seth Rogen was on one of the episodes, and it was like them eating food in Vancouver, BC, and like so much of that, like the food industry is run by Asian immigrants, East Asian immigrants. I think like maybe specifically Japanese, but yeah, and that's just like how like the food industry there is just so different because of that than the rest of Canada. Maybe, I don't know, actually never been to Canada, but in the Pacific Northwest it's pretty white, I'll say.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah,
I found it really interesting to read this book like at this current time because of like the Ukrainian Russian like war that's going on, and like all Denmark is like, I mean all over Europe there's so many immigrants and people who like need safe spaces happening, so it's like a huge discussion, at least over here. Like obviously there's immigrants like all the time, but it felt like really relevant, I think, to read this now, at least like what I've been thinking about and stuff.
Are you having a lot of Ukrainian refugees in Denmark?
Yeah. But Denmark is also like quite a racist country. So it's been like, yeah, a lot of protests and stuff about how they're treating people of color and such. Mm-hmm. And actually in Sweden, I met this woman she was from Nigeria, but she'd lived in Ukraine for like 10 years. And she'd first left her life in Nigeria like 20 years ago. And now she'd left everything behind in Ukraine. And now she was on a train to Sweden. And that's how I met her. And she was on her way to like a refugee camp on the countryside. Yes, I was talking. It wasn't really. That's not. I don't know. It's not really relevant.
No, it is. It's super relevant, right?
It kind of felt like
yeah.
when I was talking to her, it sort of like mimicked a little bit the experiences like of the main character and how he meets these people and he learns the stories and you get to like hear the stories of like these different people and experiences. Kind of written like a little mini story in a story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Like the literal experience of having to leave Ukraine right now is like such an individual character driven one, you know? It's like every person's like story, it's all like impacted by this one thing, but it's all like so unique, like where they're going, how they're leaving.
Yeah. I feel like the book shone a light on that too.
Did you read that book you were talking about in the Discord, Sim?
Gray Bees?
Yes.
No, not yet. I just got it. It came in like 2 days ago.
Nice.
So if either of you or anyone else wants to read it as like a side read for the Climate Fiction Book Club. But yeah, it takes place in Ukraine's gray zone, which was the no man's land between the contested regions of Ukraine and the loyalist and separatist forces. There was safety inspector turned beekeeper. As spring approaches, he knows he must take them far from the gray zone so they can collect their pollen in peace. Oh, it sounds like a little bit like Candide. Like it says, wherever he goes, Sergeyev's childlike simplicity and strong moral compass disarm everyone he meets. But could these qualities be manipulated to serve an unworthy cause, spelling disaster for him, his bees, and his country? I don't know. It sounds really interesting and like super duper relevant to me. So I'm going to, and it's like very highly, praised and everything.
It's a nonfiction or fiction?
No, it's fiction. Yeah. Yeah. So I'll be reading that. Have you all been reading any like clifi adjacent but like other clifi over the past month that you want to mention?
This was the first book I've read since our last book.
Wow.
Break. That's all right. Hey, it's been a hard month.
Yeah.
And you're in Europe. Like, shit, dude. It's been really hard to feel like there's any hope for anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been reading a lot about transformative justice, which feels relevant. I feel like that's where I'm finding hope because it is just so community oriented and has been helping me think more like, I don't know, like more small scale about just like survival. And I think when personally I go down like these existential wormhole thought patterns of like, there's nothing that I can do, then this is very much like rooted in my reality and like what I'm capable of. And yeah, that's been helping a little bit with my depression.
Any specific recommendations?
Yeah. We Do This Till We Free Us by Marion Cotton. I read that.
I need to put that at the top of my TBR. So many people recommend that. Yeah.
It's I would say like that's probably the best like introduction to abolition work. But then I'm reading this book right now, Beyond Survival. Strategies and Stories from the Transformative Justice Movement. And this is the best for actual things that you can do. Like this is like a guidebook, and in so many different forms. Like there's an essay by Kai Cheng Tom, who I love. Yeah.
I was going to mention Kai Cheng Tom. I was going to mention Fierce Femmes because you told me to read it, and I did.
Did you like it?
I did, and it first of all is totally climate fiction because of the things about the beached whales, and it really was one of the books that helped pull me up this month. Like
nice,
so
yes. She has an essay in here called "What to Do When You've Been Abusive," which is like an amazing resource, I think.
Wow. Yeah.
There's one called "Maybe You Don't Have to Call 911." And yeah, there's just a ton of things, and there's like literal like different worksheets and stuff that you can do for different reasons related to
really cool
community action. And yeah, it's a great time. I'm loving it. I've had to skip a couple essays that were like very heavy on certain topics, but yeah, it's definitely one that you can go back to.
Would you mind sharing that one in the Discord so people can?
Yeah.
I
read in that vein. I read Pleasure Activism this month.
Yes.
Because a lot of people, I was saying like, I'm in a deep existential depression. What should I read? Despair for the world. A lot of people suggested Pleasure Activism, but as a parent of now like 3 kids I'm taking care of all the time, it felt so like not super applicable to my life because it's like the author's like polyamorous, doesn't have kids, never wants kids.
Yeah.
Has lots of freaky sex and does a lot of drugs. And that's what like a lot of the book is about. And like that's true. Not possible. Like that's just not where I'm at right now. So
yeah, I did read that pre-baby. So
yeah,
would apply to my life now.
It's different post-baby.
Adrian Rebrown is a great climate activist, though.
Yeah,
I did read Grievers.
Did you read your other book?
I read a few of her books, and she does a lot of nonfiction.
Yeah.
Around like the emergent strategies, like
that's the one.
Yeah. She also
a better fit for me.
Yeah. She also does she does a lot about Octavia Butler. Like she has a podcast that about the Talents in the Sower, Parable of the Sower books. But she also edited an anthology of stories that are like inspired by Octavia Butler called Octavia's Parables, I think.
Octavia's Brood.
Oh yeah, that's what it's called.
Yeah, she mentioned it a bunch in the book that I read. So
nice. Yeah. And then I did read Grievers, which is her fiction story.
Oh, she does have fiction. Okay, wow. You've really read a lot of her stuff.
And I think you've also read We Will Not Cancel Us.
Oh yes. I have. Look at me go. Yeah. I have just like listened to her podcasts because she has a podcast about surviving the end of the world. I think that's actually
cool.
So yeah, she talks a lot about end times. I would also recommend Margaret Killjoy, who also has a podcast called Live Like the World is Dying. And there's like episodes on food preservation and like living off grid. There's also different, like one that was really helpful during the heat wave was just like how to survive a heat wave and like just really good applicable things. Yeah.
Can I tell you a little secret since no one's watching this right now?
Yeah.
Both Adrian Rebrown and Margaret Killjoy, who you just mentioned, are published by AK Press, which is this anarchist press collective out in Glasgow and Oakland. And they have
who this is published by also.
Yeah. Oh, they have my book, my novel, my latest adult novel, and like the editing team really liked it and they want to publish it, but they send it to like their collective of readers because they decide like as a collective if they're going to publish something, and they're going to tell me their answer on April 12th.
Whoa.
I'm trying to brace myself for rejection because it's almost always rejection, but maybe it won't. Maybe I'll have the same publisher as Adrian Rebrown. Be super
I could really see you have like, because there's a series of novellas like the Grievers by Adrian Rebrown is, and A Country of Ghosts by Margaret Killjoy are both in this series so far. And I think they were asking for submissions for that series. I don't know if they still are, but they're all yeah, like I could definitely, I think
they
that
solicited it off a tweet in a pitching contest. Isn't because it's not an I wouldn't have submitted because this is not a novella. It's 100,000 words.
Well,
But
that's a big.
They're trying to expand their fiction wing, which actually, I think that that's cool because, like, I think more leftists and anarchists and just like climate people, like everyone in general, is waking up to the importance of story, which is what we're all about here in the Climate Fiction Book Club. And like, it's really exciting to me to see more. And I feel like I've been hearing it in a lot of different places lately, like from Don't Look Up, you know, there was like this sense of like, oh, maybe climate communication like works through story and not just like Al Gore with a PowerPoint, you know? So I think that's cool.
I think, yeah, they'd be a great place to be.
Yeah, I'd be so thrilled.
Yeah.
Especially with traditional publishing, like it is just a bonfire of horribleness right now.
Yeah.
Did you see that thread about how every single one of the 4 big publishing companies is like, it's like Rupert Murdoch, the French Rupert Murdoch, and then 2 literal Nazi billionaires, like literally German, they were Nazis. And then they kept their money. And then those are the 4 people that own the 4 big publishing houses. Where like you go in Barnes and Noble, every single book you see profits one of those 4 people.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's terrifying. I've definitely been just like, I think just through like understanding what my reading taste is, I've just been reading so many books from small presses and it has changed my life. Like
the most like radical shit's coming out, you know?
Yeah, I'm just not interested in like love triangles that don't turn into polyamory, you know? I'm not interested in like, although I guess I think Iron Widow was published by a major publisher.
It was. A few slipped through, you know, some interesting stuff slips through.
Yeah, but a lot of it is like okay, I have my wrap up coming out later today, but you're balanced on this book. But for example, this book was advertised as a book about the trans discrimination in healthcare. And that was a complete marketing scheme because there are no trans people in this book. And there is no fighting for trans rights in this book.
Wow.
And it was a horrible letdown.
That's infuriating.
Yeah. What? It's a lot of that. It's like the books that do seem like radical and interesting are just marketed using buzzwords, and it's like not actually what's in it.
And so formulaic too.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're reading something from Small Press next month.
Yes.
Disruption, which is from Catalyst Press. They're independent. Do you want to talk about it? Will, is your pick, right?
What? Yeah, it's my pick. I haven't read up on it since last time, but it's a short story collection, kind of like SFF, by authors from many different countries all around Africa. And they're supposed to be like quite radical, talking about environmental degradation and through like a decolonial perspective and stuff.
I'm really excited. I think we'll have a lot to talk about with like so many different stories and authors and perspectives and things.
Yeah. I think they're good.
Yeah, I feel like when I just like don't vibe with a book, I just don't have a lot to say about it. So I think with short story collections, it'll be a bigger chance that I'll have things to say.
Yeah. Okay. Well, any last thoughts? And then we'll let Will go to sleep. Thank you, Will, for staying up. And we did this so that Nat could join us from Singapore. And I don't know what happened, but I hope that Nat's good. And we'll probably be back to our normal time next month because we're not going to make you do this again.
Do you know your next book, Sim?
No, I don't yet. I haven't even thought about it. Why do I never think about how I need to have like another pick until when we're doing my show. I never have once thought about it, but I'll figure it out. What do you guys feel like we've been is guys, sorry I said guys, bad habit. Is that okay? Cool, guys.
I identify with guys.
Personally. Okay, guys are cool. Okay. What do you think is like lacking that we haven't been like, what would be a good genre that we haven't touched on?
Like memoir?
Ooh, memoir could be good. Yeah.
Oh, but you did the last nonfiction.
So that is technically nonfiction. Yeah.
That's true.
Maybe kidlit. We haven't done any kidlit in a while. There's not a lot.
Graphic novels.
Oh, yeah, I was thinking about that. I did see a climate fiction graphic novel at the library while I was working the other day.
Wait, I know what mine's gonna be. I know what it's gonna be. Okay, my friend Ganzier, who he's so cool. He is Egyptian and he like got famous from covering the Arab Spring and everything in Egypt. And he has but now he lives in Houston. And he has a graphic novel. And actually, I think the first issue is free online. It's called The Solar Grid. So you can actually read the whole first book like comic book online. And then there's like 6 more issues. So it's expensive to buy like all 6 issues of a graphic novel. But we could maybe read like a couple of them, like 2, maybe the first one and then the second one or something. That could be cool.
Sounds fun.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say tentatively that because I need to look into it and make sure like it's free and everything, and that I'm not wrong about that. But that would be cool.
Yeah,
in low stakes. Oh, because I'm probably not gonna be able to be doing a lot of reading next time it's my turn around because I think I'll still be doing the story reading for Grist's competition. The Fix 2022 competition. So I'm gonna read like 1,000 solar punk stories.
Jeez.
Wow.
Yeah, that's getting paid to read solar punk stories.
Cool. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. Hopefully it won't like burn me out on doing it forever.
True.
Never want to read climate fiction or solar punk ever again.
Right? I think though what it'll be is like I think a lot of the stories will be like very similar, you know? And so it'll be good to see like, okay, what's everyone else writing? I don't have to write that. It's been written like 50 times, you know.
So you have something that's been written 15 times. Also, I have a bubble story. This is also the next book after Will's. So
cool.
Just want to plug that real quick.
All right. That's it. I guess we'll go. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you for watching this later as we know it's stuck around. But thank you. We always get lots of watches later. So if you are watching this, thank you for watching our book club, and we hope you enjoyed it. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.